Hi, boys and girls. We are going to be working on this bouncing ball. Right now, I have a composition set up so that a ball is coming in from the upper left-hand corner, bouncing on the ground, hitting the wall, then coming down and settling in a couple of bounces. It's a lot more complicated than it looks, but this is the beginning of understanding motion graphics inside of After Effects. First thing you're going to do up in your project window here, this is my current composition. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to start from scratch. So this little guy here, create new composition, and I'm going to call this 3 bouncing ball, and I'm going to call it 2. Your dimensions should be 1920 by 1080. Your frame rate should be 23.976. If you need to change any of that, you can type it in, or you can pull down the lists and find the dimensions there. I'm going to set a duration for my composition to be 3 seconds. You can do 5 seconds if you want to. You can do 2 minutes if you want to, but really this is going to be short. Background color, I'm going to leave it white. Let's keep it very simple. And then hit OK. I now have a second composition in here, and like it said, the background's white. And here we go. This is your canvas or composition window. I can press spacebar and move around. I can scroll wheel and zoom in and out. This is your timeline. You can notice when it's blue, it's highlighted, then it's active. So if I click here or click here, you can see how my screen is changing. I can also press spacebar and scroll here, left and right. I can option scroll to zoom in and out of my timeline. Right here, this is the time code. This is basically the time that you're at. So if you click and drag your playhead right here, you can see that the time code is changing. We are running at 23.976 frames per second, so you can see at 23, or more accurately 23.976, it's almost at 1 second. Now it's at 1 second. So that's the gist of it. 0 seconds, that's 1.00, that's 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. That's as long as my composition was. All right, you're going to make a circle. We're not going to bring in any graphics from anywhere else. We're going to draw them inside After Effects. After Effects does a good job with shapes. That's what this is. Click and hold, and go to the ellipse tool. That's just selecting the type of tool. You can click and drag and draw, but I don't recommend that. I would double click, and it's going to put an ellipse in there, which is it's not a circle. It's got curves to it, and it's going to fit to your composition. So this is not the right size or color. We're going to recolor it first. So your shape layer is active. It's clicked. Okay, if it's not active, you're not going to do anything to it. So you got to make sure that you've clicked your layer. Okay, it changes. Next, I'm going to go up to fill, and I'm going to pick a color. Let's pick a nice sputter orange. Sweet. Next, I'm going to change the size. Right here under contents and ellipse, I'm going to change the ellipse path, and I'm going to go to size. There's all sorts of things here. These little arrows show that there's more content there. This is a stopwatch, meaning that I can add animation. So I can animate anything. You can quickly see how complex this might be. This block, or this chain right here, links the width and height dimensions. I want this to be a circle, so I'm actually going to unclick this, and I'm going to type in, let's try 200 by 200. I'm pressing tab to move through my numbers. You can also press enter. That looks pretty good. You can make it bigger or smaller if you like to, but not too big. I would say probably 300, maybe 100 as the smallest. Okay, I'm going to zoom in to my graphic. Right in the middle of this graphic is this little target. I'm going to get really close. Okay, I'm pressing my spacebar to pan. That is called the origin. That is the center of my graphic. So it needs to be in the center. If you've done it like I have, you don't have to worry about it. However, if you want to move your origin, make sure you do it first thing. You can select your layer, press Y, and then you can click and drag this around. What that'll do is, let's say, I'm going to undo that. Let's say I move my origin up here, and then I want to rotate. It's going to rotate about that origin. So it's really important. I'm going to undo, Control Z. that your origin is in the center of your circle. And if you've done it like me, you're good to go. Okay, I'm going to name my layer. The way you name a layer is you highlight it and you press enter. And I'm going to call this circle and hit enter to accept. You can also color this layer. See how the dots on the outside are blue? If I really wanted to, I could change the way that this layer is displayed. This won't be in your final video. It's just a way for you to kind of organize. So you can change colors if you want to. I'm going to make it orange. Or maybe something crazy like cyan. You can choose, custom colors and preferences and all that. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. And next I'm going to set my... Okay, next we're going to set some markers. According to my storyboard that I drew out, I have a couple of key frames that I want to achieve. So I don't want to select my layer, I want to deselect it so you can kind of click anywhere. And I'm going to press, on my Mac, it's a Control-8, and it puts this little marker right there. I'm going to double click the marker, and then I'm going to type something, start, and then OK. It gives me a little text tab. Just a reminder for myself. This is just helpful for you. That's it. Okay, I'm going to do a few more. I want it to hit the ground at 12 frames, so I'm going to go to 12, Control-8, double click, type in ground. And I'm going to continue through this. Wall, it's going to hit the wall at 1 second. Wall. And then it's going to peak at 112. Peak, like it's hitting the wall, it's coming up. And then it's going to hit the ground again at 2. And if you have a longer animation, then you're just going to have to adjust. So I'm going to say ground 2. And then it's going to bounce at 208. This is something I just did before, so I'm just kind of copying what I've already done. Bounce 1. 214-ish. Maybe bounce 2. And then maybe at 220 it's going to stop. All right. If you were to click on this layer and then do the same thing, it would put a marker on the layer, which is fine too. But you can delete markers if you want to. I like to put them on the main timeline. All right, so we know the layout, we know the timing, right? We know the staging of where this should be. Let's go ahead and start animating. First, I need to pull up the animations that I want to do. I want to focus on 3 animations. I want to focus on position, rotation, and scale. If you click on a layer and press P, you'll get position data. You can also keyframe that and animate that. If you press S for scale or R for rotation, you can simplify what you're looking at. If you just click this arrow, it'll pull up everything. And there's so much stuff here, so it can get really, really complex. So I'd encourage you to learn the keyboard shortcuts. Here's another thing you can do. Position. Let's say I want to also see scale. I'm going to press Shift S. And then I want to see rotation as well. Shift R. Those are the 3 things I need to see. Okay, now we're going to start animating. First, I want to position this thing where it's going to start. I'm just going to drag it up here. You can also do this, you can do that, but I don't know. I like to click and drag. Okay, that is the starting point. I'm going to keyframe that. Okay, this little marker right here indicates that there is a keyframe. All right, at 12, I know that it's going to hit the ground. If you click and drag your ball, you can see that it's created this line. That is a path. That is the path that it's going to follow. There's little tiny dots in there, and we'll go over that a little bit more, but that is basically the path. What is done in between here, you can see you've already created some animation. So we've already animated. Okay. The next thing I want to do, let's see. What I want to do is I want to actually rotate this thing to begin with, and I don't want to animate it. So I'm going to click and drag this thing, and and go to 45 degrees. I can also type that in there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to practice squash and stretch. When something's in motion and it's not a rigid body like steel or wood or something like that, it's going to stretch and it's going to squash. It's a really important element of animation. So I'm going to set a keyframe at 0 for scale. I'm going to come to about halfway between start and ground, and I'm going to pull one of these ends over. I can also pull this corner. You want to keep the same mass as the original ball, but you want to make it longer, something like that. So when we start, it's a circle, but when we are moving at the highest rate of speed, it has stretched. Okay, and we get to the ground, and what it's going to do is right before the ground, it's going to remain the same scale. So I'm going to press another keyframe at 11 frames. I'm actually going to put another, I'm going to put a rotation keyframe as well at 11 frames. I'm going to go to 12, and then I'm going to change things. So now I want to rotate this back to 0. I'm going to stretch it. I'm going to put it down so it looks like it's actually hitting the ground and squashing. So it's going to go from corner, stretch, and then it's going to squash right as it hits. Okay, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to go up to the wall. And I'm just going to position it. Don't worry about the size right now. I'm going to rotate this at 13 seconds so that, let's say, -35. It's not going to be so stretchy quite yet, so I'm going to, here's one thing you can do. The scale of this circle, this keyframe right here, if I go back, that's the original scale. It's 100%. I can copy, Control C, this keyframe, and then paste it right here. So this one is now back to my original size. So we got down, stretching, squashing, then it's going to bounce up and then hit the wall. So again, I'm going to copy what I did. I want to stretch it. It's automatically putting keyframes in now for me because I already have keyframes established. It's going to hit the wall, and now we need a keyframe. So I'm going to go to 23. Here's another thing you can do. Option R will put a keyframe in for you right before it hits the wall, and then I'm going to rotate it. Let's say -90. And then I'm going to position it so it's against the wall. It's probably not going to squash so much. As it starts to slow down, things are going to be less dramatic. Okay, so we got down, up, hits the wall, squashy. Always replay it back and make sure. You can press spacebar too to get a feel for it. All right. So we have 2 straight lines so far. This next one's going to be different. This is the peak. I'm going to pull my ball where I think this will come off the wall. It's going to be higher. It's going to be to the left. It's going to be up here. And then I'm going to come down and pull it to the ground. Don't worry about the size or anything like that. So it's going to bounce, bounce, come up, and then down. I need to do something different with this keyframe right here. Notice I can click on that path and my keyframe will highlight. So right here, I want it to curve. All right, so I'm going to introduce a new tool. The pen tool, G. If you come over to this keyframe, you can click and drag, and you're pulling out these handles, these Bezier handles that you'll see across the board in any graphic design program. But what that's going to do is it's going to curve now. And you can come in and pull these handles however you want to. If you press V, you can control that. If you press G, you can control one handle at a time. This should be smooth, so both handles should move at the same time. So I'm pressing V for move, and then I'm coming in and adjusting. So you can play that back and see how your curve looks right there. It looks pretty good. Another thing I need to do right here, my scale should be about the same. I know under scale, my first frame was 100 by 100. I'm going to copy that, paste it at the peak. Actually, I'm going to paste it here too. I'm going to delete this one. So when the time it comes off the wall, it's normal size. Right here, it's going to come down and have some velocity. So right here at 112, I'm going to hit it, Option R and Option S for scale. And then about right here, I want that to rotate. Pressing W on my keyboard, I can actually rotate. I'm going to also press V and scale. Oop, I don't want to move it, just scale. So it's going to start stretching again, coming down, stretching, and then right here it's going to hit the ground again. So you can kind of get a feel for the rhythm. So I'm just going to kind of keep coming through. I'm going to press R for rotate, S for scale, and figure out probably right here before I'm going to do the same thing. R for rotate, S for scale, it's going to remain. Right here it's going to change quite a bit. Pressing W for rotate, pull it down, squash it a little bit. Rotation should be 0, so if you're very particular about your details, it's going to hit the ground. Okay, now we got a couple of bounces. So it's going to come up. Actually, I'm going to just pull this straight over right here, and then bounce number 2. I'm pressing Shift to bring it straight over, and then I'm going to bring it over again. You can see that it's going to hit the ground. It's going to bounce here and here. I just need to bring it up. Okay, so right here, I'm going to bring it up. Right here, I'm going to bring it up. And then right here, it's just going to roll. Okay. Right here, I need to change my scale back to 100%. So I'm going to go back to my first keyframe, copy, paste. Boing, boing. If you want to squash and stretch here too, that would be great. Okay, I'm just going to press S, or press the space bar. It's looking pretty good. It shouldn't go under the, right here, it's too low. You can also select a graphic and hit your arrow keys. So if I wanted to bring this up, there we go. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is we just need to make the tops of these peaks, this one and this one, we need to make them curvy. Just like we did this one, I'm going to press G on my keyboard, and I'm going to pull these out. Kind of go with the direction of your path. Okay, if I press Control 0, it's going to play through and loop depending on your setup. And that looks pretty good. Now you have a bouncing ball. Way to go. Hopefully it looks like this. And keep working at it. Try different time lengths. Try different bounces. You don't have to copy me. But this is an exercise in where your keyframes are at, how to set them, how to manipulate your timeline, how to manipulate your graphics. Once you get this down, you're going to be good to go. But you got to get this part down first. All right. Good work.